Hey Mark.
Hey,
Hey, we got Laguna Seca coming up. You got a story you can tell us about Laguna from back in the day?
of course, come on in. So, as many of you know, we're in the GTP era of IMSA. Here we are in 2025, but actually, it started the first era in the early 80s. And the significance of Laguna Seca and the important story of it is the very first true GTP car won its first race there, driven by Brian Redmond, Lola T600, powered by Chevrolet. And the background to that was IMSA had been dominated by European manufacturer, what were then Group 5, what IMSA called GTX cars, which were Porsche 935s, the McLaren BMW 320 Turbo, the Zaxbyte Mustang Turbos, but cars that were based essentially on a production chassis shell, but made 850 horsepower and had huge wings, and they were just really spectacular. They spit fire and all that. They were really cool cars, but there really wasn't an available car that teams could acquire that could compete with them. So if you couldn't get one of those cars, or get one and modify it the way you want it to be, which was allowed, you kind of limited where you could go. So the Lola T600 was created as one of the first GTP cars with Eric Broadley at Lola, led by Brian Redmond, famous driver. The car is being inducted into the Hall of Fame of IMSA this year as one of the cars. And it was in its actual first race. And everybody kind of poo-pooed the concept of what we were doing, which was taking a relatively inexpensive, 650 horsepower, 6-liter GM motor and putting it in the back of a prototype car. What made the GTP car get different was the fact that it was a purpose-built race car, designed from the ground up to be a race car, not inhibited by the dimensions of a Porsche 911 or a Ford Mustang or a BMW 320, which were the cars that the European manufacturers based these GTX cars on. So they had to maintain more or less the silhouette of the production car. So they had a greenhouse that looked just like a 911 or a 320 or a Ford Mustang. The GTP car was a pure race car. It was mid-engine as opposed to rear engine in the Porsche case and front engine in the Ford and the BMW's case. So the differences are that one had the ability to install or use allowed aerodynamics that, like I said, the ground effect tunnels of the T600 were not anything new, but it was the first time they were really applied to a sports car. And what essentially it was it created the shape of a wing using the entire car. The curved part of the wing was the tunnel underneath the car. So essentially what these were inverted wings, which instead of creating lift on an airplane, created pressure down. So they were able to corner a lot faster, and that provided some drag, okay, but the other cars, the GTX cars, had a lot of drag because they were bigger and they were based on that production unibody. So that drag required them to have 800 horsepower to make the speed. But in the corners, they were really kind of lousy because they didn't have that aerodynamic efficiency, which the prototype had. Now, in 2 years from that point on, the T600 was, the concept of these cars was just continually evolving through the 80s. There was the Marches, and then there was the Porsche 962 and the Ford Probe and the Buick Hawks and the Jaguars and the Nissans, and the concept stayed true for a decade. The regulations for those cars were written on 4 small pieces of paper, and they never changed. The only thing that changed would be the weight or the power output that was allowed based on the various engines that could be used. But the size of the car, how it was built, what it could do, the drawing that's in those rule books was done by John Bishop on a piece of paper on his desk. And that held true for a decade. And so Laguna was kind of its debut to the world. And I think Brian qualified like 6th or 7th, nothing really outrageous speed-wise. But as the race progressed, he just kind of moved up ahead of John Fitzpatrick and all these other hot rod guys, Danny Ungaius and all those guys, and won the race out of the box first time for that car. So the GTP era, really, there were some attempts of GTP cars before that, but this was really the purpose-built first one from the ground up. And to have it show up, it put IMSA on the map, I think, worldwide, that we were able to create a concept that was cost-effective, simple, easily replicated so that more of them could be run by more teams to win the big races at Daytona, at Sebring, everywhere we went. So it was really an important moment in IMSA's history, in the car's history, and really in sports car racing history that this little company in Connecticut at the time came up with this idea that would be sort of out of the box, the car to beat against the best that the European manufacturers could put together to race here. So it was a very cool experience for everybody who had a chance to see that. And it led to a decade of GTP racing of that era. And of course that name resonates true today, probably because of that previous history as well, which is why so many people recognize what we're doing today with the new cars as GTP cars, which also won their first race out of the box. All right, is that good?
That was good.
You can leave now.